Let's go to the interweb subscribers and welcome back to Drama with Ted and Tina. Tina, will be your host narrator for a story about a woman who went from family afterthought to the woman who signs their checks and doesn't return their calls. Let's get into it. I'm Dana, 38 female, and this has been marinating too long. You know those families where one golden child can do no wrong while the other might as well be a piece of living room furniture? Welcome to my origin story. Just swap out the laughs for unresolved resentment. Things were surprisingly normal until I turned 8. I was the only kid back then. Mom and Dad weren't exactly Pinterest parents, but they showed up. Mom helped with homework when it didn't interfere with her TV time, and Dad occasionally remembered I existed long enough to take me fishing at Lake St. Clair. Not perfect, not tragic, just fine. Until the night it all changed. At 2 a.m., Aunt Kelly showed up like an emergency evacuation drill. "Pack your things, sweetheart," she whispered. Already stress sweating, Mom was in the hospital. My baby sister Elise was apparently done baking and had decided to make an early entrance, 2 months early. The next few weeks, hospital visits, whispered phone calls, and that sterile panic no one explains to a kid. Elise was tiny, like pocket size, but covered in tubes instead of bows. I wasn't allowed to touch her, couldn't even get close. That's when it started, the invisible line being drawn between me and them. When she finally came home, so did a fortress of Lysol. I'm talking full-on biohazard vibes, sanitizer in every room, daily bleach baths for the countertops. The scent still makes my skin crawl, but the real kicker, anytime I so much as sniffled, I was exiled. Grandma Marie's, Aunt Kelly's, didn't matter. One sneeze, pack your bag. Light cough, congratulations, you're off the island. At first, I didn't mind. Grandma Marie made these ridiculous sugar cookies shaped like barn animals, and Aunt Kelly had every single Nancy Drew mystery you could imagine. I'd curl up with a flashlight and binge them like they were gospel. For a while, it felt like a quirky little vacation every time I got the sniffles, but kids aren't dumb. Eventually, you realize you're not on an adventure. You're a contagion, an inconvenience, a walking biothreat to the family's miracle child. I wasn't being protected. I was being kept away, like a moldy casserole no one wants to admit they left in the fridge too long. So I tried, I really did. I went full model student, straight A's, smile locked in place, zero complaints. Didn't matter. Every win was swallowed whole by Elise's appointment schedule. Got first prize at the science fair. Renewable energy, thank you very much. Dad's response, "Can you store that in the garage? Elise is allergic to cardboard dust." Which, for the record, is either fake or a very niche horror story. But the moment that really cracked me came when I was 12. I'd spent months practicing for the school talent show, teaching myself to play Bridge Over Troubled Water on the piano. Yes, I know, dramatic, a little too on the nose. But it meant something to me. I wanted them to see me, not just as the healthy one, not the backup kid, just me. Elise had a 99.1-degree fever the night of the show. Guess who had zero family members in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire clan, both sets of grandparents included, gathered to witness Elise's riveting 15-minute flute recital, during which she absolutely butchered hot cross buns. No one cared. They clapped like they were front row at Carnegie Hall. Elise figured out the cheat codes early. By 7, her health was textbook normal, but the theatrics? Oh, those stuck around. Headache? Skip school. Fatigue? Dana can do her chores. Nervous about a quiz? Mom called the teacher to move the test. I'm not joking. Extensions for mild anxiety? I should have asked for legal representation just to survive junior high. So I retreated. My room became my hideout, books about art, antiques, old world jewelry. Funny how life foreshadows things. Ironically, it was the only room Elise wouldn't enter because she claimed to be allergic to my lavender air freshener. That scent smelled like freedom. And here's the messed up part. When Elise faked being sick, a tiny part of me felt relieved. At least I'd get shipped off to Grandma Marie's. She asked me about my day. She saw me. She sparked my obsession with vintage jewelry. let me catalog her costume collection like I was curating a museum. But the worst part wasn't the favoritism, it was how they rewrote the narrative to justify it. Elise needs more support because of her rough start. Dan is just so independent. No, I was a kid who couldn't figure out why having a functional immune system made me unworthy of affection. Looking back, I can see exactly how those years wired me. Being treated like a biohazard with a heartbeat, that sticks. You grow up with this low key hum in your brain whispering, you're a burden. But hey, at least it taught me to be self sufficient. When nobody checks your homework or claps for your wins, you learn to be your own damn parade float. Most people either loved or loathed high school. I saw it as a ticket out. While Elise was busy founding her middle school drama dynasty, I was plotting my escape with military grade precision. Nothing fuels ambition like knowing no one else will carry it for you. Remember those hours I spent cataloging Grandma Marie's jewelry? Turns out that obsessive attention to detail paid off. In high school, my desk looked like a Pinterest board for type A overachievers. Color-coded notes, laminated schedules, every pen aligned with military discipline. Elise called me Rain Man. Like, thanks, Elise. Nothing like a little sibling mockery to round out your trauma. But here's the upside of invisibility. No one's tracking your wins or failures, so I did everything. Joined every club that didn't clash with my part-time gig at Carson's Diner. Shout to Carol for remembering my birthday when my parents didn't. Debate team? Check. National Honor Society president? Yup. Editor-in-chief of the school paper? Triple check. Debate in particular became my outlet, nothing more satisfying than dismantling someone's weak argument while smiling politely. My junior year? That's when things really popped off. I took the SAT, scored a perfect 1600, no joke. Less than 1% of people pull that off. I stared at the screen like it was written in ancient prophecy. Then I sprinted home, thinking, this will make them see me. I burst through the door, breathless. Mom was in the kitchen helping Elise conjugate verbs or whatever. Mom, I got a perfect SAT score. Her reply, that's nice, honey, but keep it down. Elise has a big test tomorrow. Elise from the table didn't miss a beat. Some of us actually have to study, Miss Perfect. Mom, soothingly, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have the printout somewhere, never made it to the fridge. But Elise is C+ in English. Front and center. We're so proud of you, magnet and everything. College applications? A one-woman operation? I applied to 15 schools behind enemy lines. No parental involvement, no family brainstorming session around the dining table, just me, my laptop, and Mr. Chen, the only adult who seemed to realize I existed. He stayed late after school helping me figure out the FAFSA while my parents were too busy managing Elise's latest dietary preferences or whatever fake ailment was trending that week. And then the letters started rolling in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan. Each one came with scholarship offers stacked like poker chips. I kept them locked in a box under my bed like state secrets, because if Elise had seen them, cue the family panic, but if Dana goes to Harvard, Elise will be all alone. Boo-hoo. The day I got my full ride to the University of Michigan, Elise made JV cheerleading. Guess which accomplishment got the Olive Garden celebration? Spoiler, it wasn't mine. I ate microwave mac and cheese in my room while they clinked glasses over breadsticks. But that scholarship? That was my golden ticket. Full tuition, room and board, even a book stipend. I wasn't just leaving, I was escaping. Leaving a house where I was either a shadow or a nuisance. When the acceptance package came, I took it to my favorite spot, the fourth floor window seat at the public library, sat there overlooking the park, and cried. Not sad tears, pure, cathartic, holy water grade relief. At dinner, I finally told them, I'm going to Michigan. Dad blinked. Michigan? That's so far. What if Elise needs you? Mom? I hope you're not expecting help with costs. Cheerleading is very expensive, you know. Elise was crying, obviously. Oh my God, she sniffled. So, like, can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok setup. Truly, the grief was overwhelming. That summer before college, I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner. I was on a mission, save every cent. Carol, the owner, always made sure I left with a slice of pie and a few extra bucks in my tip jar. She also gave me a skill more valuable than anything a high school ever taught: how to spot real people in a world full of noise. Baby, she'd say, wiping down the counter, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually got the least to say. Move in day at U, Michigan came. Naturally, my parents couldn't make it. Elise had, you guessed it, a cheerleading competition. Aunt Kelly stepped up, drove me to campus, helped unpack, and handed me a plain white envelope. Inside, 500 bucks. Your grandma Marie wanted you to have this, she whispered. She's proud of you. Later, I found out grandma had been quietly saving it from her Social Security checks for months. That kind of love, you don't forget. That first night in my dorm, I sat on the edge of my brand new twin XL bed and made myself a promise. I was going to build a life so full, so rich, so undeniably mine that being overlooked would never be possible again. Not out of revenge, not for them, for that 8-year-old girl who kept getting exiled for having the audacity to sneeze. College wasn't the end, it was the beginning. College flew by in a blur of sleep-deprived nights, instant ramen, and something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. Real, glorious, no one knows my sister's name here, freedom. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan. Not that anyone at home noticed. They were too busy helping Elise transfer to her third college in 2 years. What can I say? Consistency wasn't her thing. But here's where the plot twists. I landed an entry-level position at a luxury auction house in Detroit. We'll call it Everton Phillips. Not the real name, obviously, but if you're in the biz, you know exactly who I mean. Think old money, white gloves, and antique furniture worth more than my entire childhood. I started in estate sales cataloging the earthly leftovers of the wealthy deceased. Glamorous? No, but it paid. And I needed experience. Most of the job was just logging china sets and naming sofa styles I couldn't afford. Then came the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston, recently departed, had no heirs, but left behind a small museum of what everyone assumed was junky costume jewelry. Dozens of boxes, gaudy trinkets galore. But buried in the pile was something that made me pause. A quiet little Art Deco brooch. It wasn't loud or flashy, but the weight felt wrong. Too heavy for a fake. And the clasp far too intricate. This wasn't some knockoff, cue Grandma Marie's jewelry boot camp. I spent my lunch break buried in jewelry marker guides, then stayed after hours digging through antique jewelry databases using the company's login. And the deeper I went, the more convinced I became this thing was real, important real. Problem: I was the new girl. Nobody wanted their intern telling them a glorified trinket was worth anything, so I did what the debate team trained me to do. I built my case. For 2 weeks, I skipped actual lunch to become an amateur Art Deco expert, spent my pitiful savings on an online gemology course, compiled a presentation so thorough it could have passed as a dissertation. Then I approached Mr. Harrison, my boss, armed to the teeth with evidence. Sir, I said, trying not to sweat through my blazer, I think there's something significant in the Kingston collection. He barely glanced up from his phone. Dana, we already cataloged those as costume pieces. I persisted. Yes, but take a look at these maker's marks. They match Cartier's 1925 signatures. Now I had his attention. Where'd you learn all this? Me. I did some research. That costume brooch, it sold for $47,000, 0 cents at auction. Turned out to be a rare, limited-run Cartier piece made for a minor European royal. Just gathering dust in a dead woman's dresser. But the real win? Harrison started trusting me. He handed me other pieces, artifacts, projects. Suddenly, my nerdy side hobby of organizing grandma's fake pearls became a career blueprint. I went all in. Every affordable online course, every estate sale, every old world auction. I started keeping a pocket-sized notepad, jotting down authentication tricks and historical quirks like a nerdy little magpie with a magnifying glass. And for the first time in my life, it felt like my knowledge, my quiet obsession was worth something. My apartment looked like a jewelry historian's fever dream. Walls plastered with Hallmark diagrams, certification charts, and post-its with scribbled gem codes. But the chaos had a rhythm. The auction house was thriving, and I was becoming a secret weapon. I found pieces others missed, built relationships with serious collectors, and actually understood the market. Suddenly, my commission checks had commas. For the first time ever, I wasn't just scraping by, I was saving. Not that my family noticed. I still dragged myself to Sunday dinners like a chump. The conversations never changed. Mom cutting carrots. Dana's still at that antique shop, right? Me, mid-sip, auction house. Rachel. Oh my God, speaking of jewelry, look at this charm bracelet I got at the mall. And just like that, I'd vanish from the conversation. But honestly, I didn't care anymore because I'd finally found something that was completely, undeniably mine. Not Rachel's sister, not the family disappointment, just Dana, the expert, the one who knew her worth. Then came the Rothschild collection. 2 years into the job, our firm took on a sprawling estate from one of those families whose name smells like old money. Big buzz in the industry. I helped catalog the jewelry collection, and in the middle of it all, I noticed something. An Art Nouveau brooch that looked too plain to match. Everyone passed it over. I didn't sleep for 3 days. After relentless research, I confirmed it. A one-of-a-kind piece from a famous French jeweler's private wartime collection, presumed lost since World War II. It sold for $238,000, 0 cents. Harrison called me into his office. I thought it was my big promotion. Instead, he looked at me dead serious and said, "Dana, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication firm." I laughed. Me? Start a business? With what money? My couch change? But the idea stuck. It rooted itself. I started taking small freelance authentication jobs on the side. Collectors found me through word of mouth. The website I built one weekend blew up. Private inquiries started flooding in. And one night, surrounded by jewelry manuals and tools I'd collected like treasure, it hit me. I can actually do this. So I did what any rational, well-balanced adult would do. I went all in. I took out a loan against my car, emptied my savings, rented a glorified storage unit above a Chinese restaurant. The rent was dirt cheap because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only worked if you sat near the window. But it was mine. The first few months were, well, terrifying. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. in a cold sweat, mentally running the numbers on how long I had before bankruptcy. Loan payments felt like piano wire around my neck. My office furniture, a folding table from Goodwill and a chair I found abandoned on the curb. But in the jewelry world, reputation is currency, and I had both. I started small, local antique dealers, pawn shops with questionable lighting. Little by little, I carved out space, one authentication at a time. My fees were lower than the big-name firms, but word was getting out. What I lacked in marble lobbies and branded pens, I made up for in obsessive precision. Slowly, my name started circulating. 6 months later, I hit a turning point. A dealer I used to work with at the auction house reached out. He had a client with a collection of Victorian-era brooches and wanted a second opinion before selling. What landed on my desk was massive. 3 generations worth of heirlooms, dozens of intricate pieces, most assumed to be late-era replicas. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks. I documented every clasp, stone, and engraving like I was preparing for the Jewelry Olympics. And buried among the sparkly noise, I found 2 rarities. Genuine museum-grade brooches that had been completely misclassified. The owner, ecstatic. She paid my fee and then added a little surprise. A 10% commission when the piece is sold. That payout, $86,000, 0 cents. More than I'd made in the previous 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone wouldn't shut up. Private collectors were calling, estate lawyers wanted appraisals. Even my old auction house started quietly sending me work again. I'm almost certain Harrison had a hand in that. Respect, boss. By year 2, it was time to scale. I hired my first employee, Jenny, a gemology grad who reminded me way too much of myself. Brilliant, overlooked, and absurdly meticulous. Today, she's our head of authentication and worth every carat of her salary. We left the soy sauce scented office behind and moved into a real downtown space. Hired a full team, built systems, built a name. Apparently, I'd developed a knack for spotting treasure where others saw costume junk. You wouldn't believe how often history ends up in someone's attic, mislabeled and forgotten. Until we get our hands on it, success came with complications, mainly keeping it from my family. As we grew, it got harder to maintain the illusion. They still thought I worked at some dusty little antique shop, and I let them. At Sunday dinners, Elise would toss out comments dipped in sarcasm. Dana, I've got some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop could use it. Cute. Meanwhile, I had spent that morning authenticating a $1,200,000 0 cents Fabergé item. Sure, I'd say with a smile. I'll look into it. Mom still introduced me as the other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. This while I was being quoted in Forbes, under my company's name, of course. We just launched our third office, and the twisted part, I started enjoying the secret. It became my little private joke. I'd show up to family dinners in what they assumed was a clearance rack Target outfit, actually vintage Chanel. Elise would go on about her entry-level marketing job while I quietly knew I'd just closed a deal bigger than her salary. I started playing games, wore authentic Harry Winston earrings to Christmas. Nobody blinked. Elise once spent 20 minutes raving about her $200 0 cents Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe worth more than her car. No one noticed, not once. Managing growth was a whole new beast. By year 5, we had offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time in airports than in my bed. The company became known for one thing above all: discretion. Turns out, rich people like their jewels verified quietly. The money got wild, so did the responsibilities. I had to hire a team of financial advisors. Despite that, I kept a low profile, bought a nice house in a good neighborhood, tasteful, not flashy, a luxury car that blended in. My only real indulgence, my home office. It's got cutting-edge authentication equipment, a vault that would give Fort Knox performance anxiety, and a security system that could detect a mouse blinking. The irony? They thought I was helping them from some place of personal sacrifice. Mom would beam and say, "It's so sweet of Dana to help out. She must be eating ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just earned a commission larger than their entire mortgage. Twice. That's the strange thing about success. The higher you climb, the harder it is to explain to people who've only ever looked down on you. Trying to describe it feels like explaining color to someone who's only ever known grayscale. They don't lack intelligence, they just lack context. By this point, my company wasn't just successful, it dominated the high-end authentication game in the Midwest. Our name carried weight, our client list looked like a Forbes gala, but every Sunday I reverted to character. Dana, the humble antique shop worker, smiling through pot roasts like it hadn't been cooked into drywall. Mornings were for Zoom calls with collectors in Dubai. Afternoons spent authenticating 7-figure artifacts. Evenings? Folded into a too small dining chair, eating overcooked beef while Elise delivered a monologue about her latest marketing triumph. Usually something like not spilling her boss's latte. Riveting. But one Sunday stands out. I had just completed a career-defining transaction, authenticating a long-lost Cartier piece that had been hidden in a safe deposit box for over 40 years. The commission? Let's just say it came with more zeros than my parents' retirement fund. I drove straight from that meeting to dinner, still riding the high. I walked in, still glowing. Mom looked me over and frowned. "Dana, honey, is everything okay?" Your clothes look a little worn. Oh, just trying to save money, I said, while wearing a $3,000 0 cents cashmere sweater chosen specifically for looking aggressively average. Elise chimed in, well, maybe if you got a real job instead of playing with old jewelry. Dad cut in, Elise, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I almost aspirated my pot roast. Try not to laugh, Dana. Keep chewing. It was around that time Aunt Kelly told me they were struggling. Rachel's student loans, medical bills, talk of maybe selling the house. And despite everything, it was still home. So I did what any emotionally tangled, secretly rich eldest daughter would do. I set up an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000, 0 cents, to their account. When asked about it, I said I was saving money by living on rice and beans. They nodded solemnly. The rest, they assumed, came from Aunt Kelly or some other generous mystery relative. Naturally, Elise took full credit, claimed she had inspired the family to come together. Then spent my money like she'd minted it herself, and I let her. The money helped, of course it did, but it also warped everything. My parents started treating me with this bizarre cocktail of pity and patronizing admiration, like I was some kind of noble peasant bravely living in squalor to keep the family afloat. Meanwhile, Elise's spending habits took a nosedive into absurdity. She'd show up to Sunday dinner, flaunting new designer bags, swearing they were outlet steals. Please, I can spot a real Gucci from across a parking lot. Uh, she started taking luxury vacations, posting filtered pics of herself sipping cocktails in Santorini with captions like, blessed beyond belief. I was 95% sure she was using my support money to fund her influencer fantasy. And still, I said nothing, because the irony, it was delicious. Then came the MBA drama. Elise decided she wanted to go back to school, a private university, naturally. Nothing but the best for the family's gifted darling. Mom called me in tears. Dana, we just can't afford it, she said. I suggested state schools, practical, respected, affordable. Mom's reply, oh, honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. Oh, I understood just fine. Speaking of helping, she added, do you think we could increase your monthly contribution? So I did. I bumped it to $7,000 0 cents a month. My accounts barely noticed. But hearing them fawn over Elise's initiative, praising her ambition while assuming I was living off expired canned goods, that stung. And the cherry on top? I had just been invited to give a guest seminar at the very business school Elise dreamed of attending, not just a lecture, an invitation from the dean himself. Topic? Luxury goods, authenticity, and sustainable growth, the kind of thing that fills auditoriums. I told my family I couldn't make Sunday dinner because of a client emergency. I was too exhausted to invent a better excuse. And there it was, my own weird dual existence. By day, I ran a multi-million-dollar authentication firm. My name opened doors, my signature closed six-figure deals. But by night, Sunday night, I was just Dana again. The other daughter, the disappointment, quietly passing the mashed potatoes while pretending not to exist. The breaking point? Thanksgiving. By then, the weight of my carefully constructed lie was unbearable. Elise had made plenty of jabs at my career in front of relatives, each more smug than the last. Mom constantly apologized to guests for my modest lifestyle, like I was a stray she'd let in out of guilt. Dad kept suggesting I find something steady. And honestly, I always knew the truth would come out eventually. I just didn't expect it to explode in a blaze of cranberry sauce and hypocrisy. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Mom called me crying. Her back had finally given out. Herniated disc. The idea of cooking for 20 people had her in shambles. Now, I'd love to say I offered to help purely out of love, but let's be real. I was sick of chewing through drywall every year and pretending it was turkey. So I said, why don't I handle food this year? I'll have it catered. Oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer, she replied. Don't worry, I've been saving up, I lied with a straight face. Please tell me you're not taking out a loan. No loan, just a standing relationship with a high-end catering firm I used for client dinners, the kind of food that makes you resent your own kitchen. It cost more than my parents thought I earned in 2 months. Did I care? Not even slightly. Thanksgiving morning, I was feeling great. I had my laptop with me to monitor a live auction in Hong Kong, a stunning Art Nouveau necklace up for bid. My client needed authentication if they landed it. So, yes, I was working, but also I was winning. Lunch arrived right on time, every dish perfectly plated. Elise took one bite of the stuffing and couldn't help herself. Store-bought, really? Mom's is so much better. This from the same woman who once triggered a smoke alarm making toast. Mom kept apologizing for not cooking, until she noticed everyone actually enjoying themselves. Elise shut up the second she tried the maple glazed Brussels sprouts. Fun fact, those plates cost more than her entire week's groceries. After dinner and before dessert, I slipped away to check the auction. I'd set up my laptop in my old bedroom, still frozen in time like a shrine to high school me. Elise's room, meanwhile, had been remodeled 3 times. That's when it happened. That's when the bomb dropped. I'd left my authentication program running, multiple tabs open, account dashboards, contracts, reports. I hadn't expected anyone to snoop, silly me. Elise burst in without knocking. Some things never change. She claimed she was just borrowing my phone charger. But then she caught sight of the screen. Her smirk practically unfolded in slow motion. This, she clearly thought, was her chance to expose just how pathetic her big sister's little antique shop life really was. Let's show everyone what Dana's really been up to, she said, practically bouncing with anticipation. Before I could stop her, she snatched my laptop and marched it right into the dining room like she was about to perform an exorcism. Picture it. 20 people, uncles, aunts, cousins, both parents, stuffed full of gourmet turkey and half lit on wine they still believed came from Trader Joe's. Elise proudly flipped the screen toward the crowd, clearly expecting to see some flea market inventory spreadsheet. Instead, silence. The kind where your pulse is the loudest thing in the room. My screen displayed. Current account balance $12,400,000 0 cents. Pending contract $485,000 0 cents. Recent transaction $1,200,000 0 cents. Quarterly report from the Hong Kong auction firm $4,200,000 0 cents. Elise's face went through 5 stages of grief in 3 seconds. She staggered slightly. This can't be right, she whispered. Mom, still oblivious, asked, Elise, honey, what is it? Voice cracking. She's rich. Dana's rich. And then it hit. Real silence, not the awkward kind, the biblical kind. Then Mom, God help her, laughed, really laughed. Don't be silly, she said. Dana works at that little antique shop. I stood, smoothed out my basic cashmere sweater. $3,000, 0 cents of casual couture. Actually, Mom, I've owned one of the largest jewelry authentication firms in the country for years. That little business you never bothered to ask about? It has offices in 3 cities. I authenticate pieces worth millions. Dad choked on his wine. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. Uncle Mike looked like he'd swallowed a bee. Mom's laughter curdled. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up so fast her chair skidded behind her. You have millions and let us struggle? I kept my voice steady. Struggle? I've been sending you $7,000 0 cents a month. Her reply, while sitting on millions, your sister has student loans. And there it was. Not pride, not shock, not even curiosity, just entitlement. Elise started crying. I know. Try to contain your surprise. You should have told us, she sobbed. You betrayed us. Dad joined the chorus. How could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you. And that's when I lost it. Years of silence, years of being erased, years of watching them treat my existence like a tax write-off just poured out of me. Disappointment, rage, exhaustion, it all poured out. You raised me? I said, voice shaking. You shipped me off to grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every award, every milestone, every achievement because Elise might feel left out. You didn't save a dime for my college, but you took out loans for her private school. And now you're mad I built something without you? The next 5 minutes descended into chaos. Mom shrieked about family loyalty. Dad was yelling something about ungrateful children. Elise rotated between sobbing and demanding to know exactly how much I had. Meanwhile, the catering staff attempted to serve dessert like they were performing CPR on a flaming yacht. I grabbed my laptop, picked up my Hermes bag when Mom had once admired as such a good knockoff, walked out without another word. Behind me, I heard Mom speculating on how to spend my money, something about Elise's MBA and a new car. I got in my limited edition BMW, the sensible one, and drove home. That's when the real storm hit. Texts, calls. The family group chat exploded like a bad fireworks finale. Within an hour, I had 47 missed calls and over 200 messages. Mom's texts alone were a tragicomic progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor. We're looking at better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Elise transformed into a full-blown social media martyr. She posted a 5-paragraph Facebook rant about how her secret millionaire sister hoarded wealth while her family suffered in silence. The comment section? Pure chaos. Distant cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had PhDs in moral philosophy. Former classmates chimed in like they'd been waiting their whole lives to say, I knew Dana was shady. But the real gut punch? Elise wrote, I tried so hard to help Dana succeed. I encouraged her to move up from that little antique shop. I had no idea she was secretly rich. The betrayal, it hurts. I almost hurled my phone into the next zip code. The only career advice she ever gave me, you should try selling jewelry on Etsy. And that was delivered with the same energy as someone suggesting you start a lemonade stand in a recession. And then came the flying monkeys. If you're unfamiliar, that's when toxic family members send their minions to guilt trip you by proxy. Aunt Susan called to say, family is everything. Uncle Bob emailed a 3-paragraph sermon about generosity. I even got a text from my third cousin's wife's sister. I don't even know how she got my number. Aunt Susan, who I've seen maybe 3 times in my adult life, called to remind me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who still sends me birthday cards addressed to little D, emailed a novella on the spiritual importance of wealth sharing. And somehow my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she even get my number? Felt compelled to text me a paragraph about honoring your roots. But the real show started Monday morning. I walked into my office to find my parents and Elise parked in the reception area like they were waiting for a dentist. Jenny, my receptionist, looked horrified. They said they have an appointment for authentication services. Elise was holding her Michael Kors bag like it was an heirloom from Versailles. The conversation went exactly as poorly as you'd expect. Mom launched right in. We've discussed it as a family. Oh, I replied. A family discussion that excluded me. Lovely. She didn't flinch. We think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Elise chimed in, dead serious. I need at least $2 million, 0 cents to start my new life properly. Dad followed up like it was a routine grocery request. And your mother and I would like to retire, maybe get a beach house in Florida. I blinked. Did you all miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000, 0 cents every month? Elise rolled her eyes. That's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. Owe you? For what exactly? I said. The years of being ignored, the missed graduations, the endless, exhausting comparisons? Mom waved me off. Don't be dramatic, Dana. We gave you everything. I looked her dead in the eye. No, I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done. Right there in the lobby, I took up my phone and canceled the monthly transfers. Mom gasped like I'd slapped her across the soul. Elise's fake tears made a brief appearance before realizing they weren't working. Then it got ugly. They refused to leave, started yelling. I had to call security. Watching my 60-year-old mother get escorted out of my building while screaming about ungrateful children was surreal. Jenny, wide-eyed, asked, "Do you want to press charges?" I didn't, but I did have them added to the building's do not admit list permanently. Of course, they didn't go quiet. The next few weeks were a circus of desperation. Calls from unfamiliar numbers, fake email accounts, even messages sent through my company's customer service system. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. They called it family communication. I called it desperation in bulk. Mom played her final card. She called Grandma Marie. But here's the thing about Grandma Marie. She's sharper than all of them combined and runs on pure, unfiltered wisdom. When Mom told her everything, her response? Good for Dana. It's about time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak to her for 2 months after that. It's been 6 months since the Thanksgiving meltdown. I've moved into a new home with real security, both physical and emotional. Changed all my numbers. And the business? Thriving. Turns out a high-profile family blowout earns you serious street cred with discreet clients. Apparently, surviving your family is the new sign of competence. Elise still posts vague, passive-aggressive quotes about toxic wealth and sibling betrayal. According to a mutual friend, she's even trying to start her own jewelry authentication firm. Bless her heart. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped contacting me after my lawyer sent them a very detailed letter about what harassment charges could do to their finances. These days, they tell people they never wanted my money anyway and that they're praying for my soul. That's the best part. For the first time in my life, I feel free. No more Sunday dinners laced with backhanded comments. No more shrinking myself to make them comfortable. And absolutely no more bankrolling the Rachel show. My therapist says I'm finally setting healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living authentically. So that's my story, Reddit. Thanks for letting me get it off my chest. Special shout out to the catering company that sent me a handwritten Christmas card calling Thanksgiving the most entertaining job of their year. Yes, I'm still in therapy. No, I don't regret cutting them off. Yes, Grandma Marie is thriving. She's visiting next month to help me catalog a new collection. And one last thing, Elise, I know you're probably reading this. That Cartier bracelet you posted last week on Instagram, definitely fake, just saying. Nearly a year after Thanksgiving, something unexpected happened. Elise called, not to demand money, not to guilt trip me, and not to defend Mom's latest social media subtweet. She called to ask about my business. It caught me off guard. I nearly let it go to voicemail. But something about her voice, hesitant, quiet, even a little shaky, made me pick up. She said she wanted to understand what I actually did, that she'd been thinking about how she could maybe contribute. She had a marketing degree after all. Maybe she could help with client outreach, branding, that sort of thing. Now, was I convinced Elise was suddenly the jewelry world's next corporate whisperer? Absolutely not. But credit where it's due. It takes a mountain of humility to call the sister you spent years belittling and ask for a chance. So I gave her one. Temporary paid internship, no hand-holding, no family discounts. And to her credit, she showed up. On time, polished, hungry to prove herself. Elise, as it turns out, may be materialistic, but that very obsession with luxury made her shockingly effective. She closed a 6-figure client deal within 3 weeks. Even Jenny was impressed. And Jenny doesn't impress easily. We're still figuring out how to be sisters in this new version of our lives. It's not perfect, it's not effortless, but we're trying. As for our parents, I cut them off for about as long as it took for the mortgage payment to come due. I'm not a monster. I don't need their approval, but I also don't need them homeless. So I did what a decent daughter does. I made sure they were okay from a very safe emotional distance. Turns out, success doesn't always look like cutting everyone off or taking the high road. Sometimes it looks like building boundaries and still choosing kindness when you don't have to. And sometimes it even looks like your sister sitting across the conference table, wearing real Cartier, earning her place, finally, as your equal. So, yeah, that's the tale of how the family disappointment turned out to be the quiet millionaire funding everyone's delusions. If you enjoyed that little roller coaster, stick around. There's plenty more where that came from. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story of karma served cold and probably catered. Tina leaving the building.